You have a business, a brand that you're selling under, and it's similar to one of these that have been trademarks. Boom, you get a lawsuit, you get a cease and desist, your accounts are frozen, your payment processor's frozen, everything's frozen, your bank account, and you have this lawsuit. They're just guessing what people are going to sell as and then sort of capitalizing when something comes close to the trademark. Obviously, e-commerce is not the same thing now as it was then, but I think because I got involved like at the infancy, it sort of gave me insight into how that industry has developed. Even though it's different, it's the same. One of the problems, everybody who he talks to in the space, the lawyers, the accountants, who specialize in this tax optimization, they might understand tax optimization, but they don't understand e-commerce.
What about multi-banking?
That money should not be kept in one bank account, and probably not in one country either. If something happens, if something gets shut down, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to go after every single account you have at the same time. E-commerce sellers, even the ones who don't necessarily sell into the US, are using LLCs because once you get access to the US market, you get access to US banking, you get access to US payment processors, you get access to the Shopify, the TikTok store, all of that.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode. As you know, my name is Gabby, and in this episode, we're going to be speaking about the e-commerce entrepreneurs, tax optimization, and how you can actually have the legal advice from the best, the Jers way. Hi, Jers.
Hey, Gabby. Excited about this one. We get a lot of e-commerce clients, and a lot of them ask about tax optimization, and a lot of them just have structures that don't make sense or they don't have structures at all. So excited to sort of give a little base and how people can get started, or somebody who already has a structure, what they can do to really take it to the next level.
Correct me about what I just said from the very beginning. I said legal advice. Is that what you're going to be doing today or not?
Well, it's legal advice, yes and no. I like to say that all of this is informational, but of course there is a lot of legalese and a lot of legal and accounting implications in everything we talk about. So it's legal advice, but you need to be careful and always do your research.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this clarification, guys. And also we want to say that we are speaking from Barcelona, Spain. If you notice the studio a little bit different, it's because we came for the summer just to enjoy a little bit here summer. And why not, right?
Absolutely. It's the first time I've been in Barcelona in about 7 years. So the city's changed quite a bit, but it still is one of my favorite places and always will hold a special place in my heart. So it's nice to be back here.
Let's speak about the first segment, Jers, which is the .com origin story. So let's go back to the 90s, the best boom.
Yes. So as you know, I've worn many different hats in my career. And way back before a lot of you were even born, I was one of the first people to really operate in the e-commerce space. Actually, I'll go back even further. So back when I was a kid, I was in high school. This is in the very early 90s, before the internet was even a thing. I got the idea with a friend of mine that we were going to try to sell these plans. Remember, some of you might remember way back when we had these cable boxes. It was an analog signal, and if you built a certain device, you could descramble the scrambled signal. And so we bought from the back of a magazine how to do it. And being smart entrepreneurial kids, we said, hey, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's start a business with this stuff. We're just going to resell what we purchased from somebody else. So we bought these plans, got the device to work, and then we started selling before the internet in the back of classified ads and magazines. And we opened up a P.O. box and we put the ad and we said, send check, money order, or cash. And we didn't really think anything of it. A couple days later, we go and our box is overflowing with these envelopes, people sending us money for these plans. So that was the first time I got like a little taste of e-commerce before there was e-commerce.
Right.
And I said, hey, this is something.
Well,
you can make money. You can make money with something that is not location dependent. When was it? It's the very early 90s, I want to say, somewhere around 1990.
Okay. It was even before the 90s when I was asking about that. Right?
Yes, I think it was like just after the decade switch. So let's call it like 90, perhaps 91. It was a long time ago, so it's hard to remember.
What was the name of that business?
We called it Mr. Sneaky. Because that was the idea. And a funny story. So originally I was just going to have people send the checks to my parents' house because I was a kid.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't want my parents to find out about this. So that's why we rented the post office box. And it was great. I mean, we didn't do it for a long time because we sort of freaked out that maybe we're doing something illegal or something we shouldn't do. But, we made, for kids at the time, a considerable amount of money in a very short period. It was the craziest thing. We'd go to the post office. You had the little key. You turn it in the thing. And, we have hundreds of people sending us $10, $20.
Right. But the funniest story about this is that you figure out all of that. Like, okay, I don't want my parents being involved because, at that time also there were no internet where they were speaking about EAI, offshore structure, LLCs. And that time, how you figure it out? I mean,
this is before. I'm sure all that stuff existed, but it was a different world, and I was a kid, so that was the furthest thing on my mind. Then we'll sort of take the story forward a few years later. After I went to university, the internet came. It went from like Prodigy to AOL. And then when the World Wide Web came out, I'm like, okay, this is another opportunity to do this new thing that was actually called e-commerce. So with the same friend, in fact, back then it was the accessories for the Nokia phones. And we contacted a Chinese supplier. We figured out how to order the minimum quantity. We had it shipped to us in the United States, and then we put these listings up on eBay.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was right after eBay started. This is probably, I know I'm going to get my dates wrong, and somebody's going to say, no, there was no eBay. But I want to say like 98, 99, somewhere in there. And
with the same friend you made
it was the same friend that I did it.
Okay, and where were you at that time?
I was living in the United States at that time. I want to say I was in Los Angeles or New York. It's hard. It's all, as you get older, it all like sort of blurs together and you can't really remember. But so we post these listings and then it all went to my email. We didn't really think anything of it again. We forgot about it for a few days. So I had a trip plan and I actually ended up, I'm in the Czech Republic. It's before you traveled with laptops or anything like that. So I go to the internet cafe and check my email and it's blowing up with all these people buying the batteries for the Nokia 6100, 5100, whatever it was.
So you have to figure out in Prague
how to ship this product. So I like frantically getting a hold of my friend, and it wasn't so easy. You didn't have a cell phone, so you couldn't just pick up the cell phone and call. You had to use calling cards, and it's like dollars per minute to make a call. And so I get a hold of my friend, and we had to figure out, hey, I'm in Europe. I can't ship this stuff out.
How did you do it? Because at that time, Czech Republic was in a hard conflict. I mean,
this is after. So yeah, the wall fell in the early 90s. Okay. So this was just at sort of the infancy when tourism was starting in the Czech Republic. It wasn't communist. It had gone through the transition, but it was a very different place. There weren't Starbucks. There weren't chain stores. It was a very different place than it is today.
Even in 2015, when I first went to Czech Republic, I completely got fascinated because of the castles, the culture. Everybody was speaking their own language. Nowadays, it's not the same. So
no, it's changed. But even in 2015, did you have all the chains and whatnot, or was it more like local stores?
It was more local. When my first experience.
So then it's changed a lot, because the last time I was there was a few years after that. And by that point, it was Starbucks, it was Zara, Bershka, it was all of the chain stores, sort of the sameness of everywhere that we see, not just in the European cities, but all over the world.
So going back to your story, you didn't go to the famous Starbucks to get Wi-Fi and contact your sneaky friend?
There was no Wi-Fi back then. So it was a situation where if you wanted to check your email you had to go to a internet cafe. At the time, like right now, they have that EasyJet, that airline, that low cost airline. They have like white and orange. Well, that airline, that same company, had a chain of internet cafes across Europe called Easy Internet or something like that. So you just like whenever city you're in, you'd look for those big orange letters that are the same ones they still use for the airline.
Yeah.
And you'd go and they'd have dozens, if not like 100 different computers. You'd go pay a few dollars per minute, and you go online, you could check your email, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And how does experience shape you to go into business and to help entrepreneurs nowadays as they are going to the e-commerce space?
Well, it gave me an insight because obviously e-commerce is not the same thing now as it was then. But I think because I got involved like at the infancy, it sort of gave me insight into how that industry is developed. And then now, even though it's different, it's the same. And so what was important then is still important now. It gives me good insight to really understand the business and what you e-commerce sellers actually do now. I think, like I had a call with the gentleman this morning, very big e-commerce guy, and he basically said one of the problems, everybody who he talks to in the space, the lawyers, the accountants, who specialize in this tax optimization, they might understand tax optimization, but they don't understand e-commerce. And I understand both. I understand the tax optimization, I understand the structures, but I also understand the business model.
That's what we're going to be speaking about in this second segment. What is the biggest mistake e-commerce people are currently doing? And that's the first question in 2025. What's going on with them? We know already they're making millions of dollars. That's not a lie, from TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Tell me, what is the biggest mistake right now they are doing?
So I would say the biggest mistake, people get into e-commerce and they don't really think about the future. So on one hand, when you start, you don't want to get bogged down with the little details that prevent you from ever getting started. But at the same time, you need to be forward thinking. And I talk to so many e-commerce sellers who just haven't set themselves up for success. A lot of them are still selling through a personal tax number, a personal Stripe account. They have no business structure set up. And it creates a lot of problems because then as the business grows and they start paying tax, they're not set up for success. And in fact, just the structure alone can prevent them from being successful, because if they're doing it as a personal level, they just get killed on the taxes, whereas they don't have to. And the business, it's the difference between being profitable and not being profitable often is simply the structure.
So that's the other question we have. This, for the e-commerce sellers, this tax planning is more important than for freelancers or entrepreneurs?
I would say it's important for everybody. The big difference, and why I would say it is probably a little bit more important for e-commerce sellers, is the expense. So a lot of e-commerce sellers, they might do millions of dollars in revenue, but they're not actually making millions of dollars. We work with a lot of e-commerce sellers. They might do millions a month in revenue, but that can only equate to maybe in the tens of thousands in profit.
Right.
And if you don't have the structure, governments might not see that expense as expense, even if it is legitimate expense. And the result can just kill them, because if you're getting taxed on a good portion of that revenue that isn't actually profit, you're going to be out of business very soon.
So in other words, they're going to end up paying taxes in multiple borders, in multiple countries.
That can happen for like the e-commerce guys who like set up structures but don't do it correctly or move around. But let's just take a real simple case. Let's say you have an e-commerce seller from the Netherlands who just starts selling. He starts selling on Amazon, creates a website, maybe TikTok marketplace, that kind of thing.
That's doing a lot of money.
Oh, it is. You know about that guy.
Well, guys, you want me to tell about the contract?
Yeah. So tell about this contract you just got.
Guys, you're not gonna believe, but our dog is an influencer, so we just signed up a contract of $300. It's not that much, but it's a great beginning. So actually, one of our friends told us about this, and we said, why not? And we set up all of this, and immediately we receive a bunch of contracts, and we don't need even to do anything, just to upload the video with the products and just to do it online. And a lot of people are doing in 10, 20,000 per month just by promoting the product, and they know that they trust the product.
Oh, I said that's the minimum. So basically, our plan is we're going to be in Europe for 3 months, and during this 3 months, we're getting this TikTok channel for Katufa, the dog, going, and she has 3 months to earn her keep and make that $10,000 a month.
Exactly.
And it's realistic. I mean, it's difficult. I'm not going to say e-commerce is easy, but that's my goal for my dog to be making $10,000 a month, earning her keep, and then we'll set her up with the legal structure, the LLC, bank accounts.
The funny thing is because I was asking Jared, hey, how we set up this TikTok account? And he said, let's create a specific account for our dog.
Absolutely.
And literally, the dog has an LLC and is already receiving the money under her name, which is crazy.
Absolutely. Structure is important.
So speaking about that, the structure, what's going on with the triggers of what triggers the most in tax liability across the border with Shopify and Amazon right now?
Well, I think so many sellers operate or try to operate in the U.S. market because obviously it's the biggest market. So the easiest structure to set up, of course, is the U.S. LLC. And I'm in no way saying that a U.S. LLC is bad. In almost every case, if you're selling into the U.S. market, a U.S. LLC is going to be part of the structure because it gives you access to Shopify, to TikTok Marketplace, that sort of thing. But here's the problem. If we go back to our Dutch seller, he's working at home. Maybe he started, he was just doing it by himself. And I don't think I answered the last part of your question before. Basically, he's doing $2 million a month, but he's only making $20,000. The Dutch tax authorities, as a sole proprietor, they're likely to say, no, you can't take all of these expenses. And so things are disallowed, things like seller fees, things like credit card processing, if you're doing it as a sole proprietor. So in the end, he ends up losing money on what should be a profitable business just because he doesn't have the proper structure. So then that seller gets to the next level. And that next level, say, is to open up a U.S. LLC. Here's the problem. If that is the only structure, and this is a Dutch seller who lives in the Netherlands, the Dutch government is going to say, wait a second, that LLC is a pass-through entity. And that means the money isn't taxed in the U.S. We've talked about that before. A foreign-owned, single-member LLC is not taxed in the U.S., but it's taxed in the place where you have your tax residency. So that Dutch seller is going to be subject to Dutch tax on all the money flowing in through the U.S. LLC. And again, it's very likely that many of those expenses aren't going to be recognized by the Dutch tax authorities. And so as you grow, especially if you are a foreign e-commerce operator, you live in a high-tax country, a U.S. LLC in and of itself is not going to be your optimal structure.
So that's the next question I have here. That I've been receiving these inquiries over Twitter the past few days. How you start doing the right structure, the segmentation? You go globally. You have your clients across borders. This Dutch client, it says, well, I want to leave the Netherlands. This doesn't work out for me. I'm thinking about Dubai. My clients are in the US and Canada. I mean, he's everywhere, but at the same time, he's still in his home country. How this person who is listening to this podcast can actually start from zero? What is the global structure for them in order to avoid those legal issues in the future?
Well, one of the big considerations is actually to leave the high tax country. So that means setting up some sort of tax residency. It can be Dubai. We work a lot with Panama, with Paraguay. They're really similar because they're territorial tax countries. Now, the thing about territorial taxation, that means you're not going to pay tax on foreign income in those countries. The problem is it doesn't mean you can get a Paraguay tax residency and then continue your life in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Once you stay over 6 months in one of these high tax countries, you're going to be a tax resident, which means you're going to have tax obligations. So the idea is to combine the structure with the tax residency and really get out of those high tax jurisdictions, leave the system.
So they don't make this plan based on their customers, where they are from, or their passport. It's based on the tax liability it comes from.
A lot of times, yes. So there are implications, especially as you get bigger. Where are your customers? Where are you shipping the products from? That sort of thing. But more important for most e-commerce sellers is where are they actually located? Where are they performing the work? Where is their business incorporated? Those considerations are much more important for most than where the customers are located or where the product is located.
So can you walk us through the steps? First will be the tax residency, then what? Let's put example the Netherlands person.
Well, ideally, yes. Ideally, that person's going to set up a tax residency, and then he's going to look at the markets he sells into to determine the structure that makes the most sense. What we're seeing a lot of right now that's working really well is Hong Kong holding company on top of a U.S. LLC. That's going to give the seller access to the U.S. market, U.S. TikTok, U.S. Spotify, that sort of thing, U.S. banking. But it provides the protection of the Hong Kong company. Okay. So that can be a really good setup for that Dutch person who maybe is going to spend more time than they probably should in the Netherlands. That said, you need to be very careful because even with that structure, a Hong Kong company owning the LLC, if the Dutch tax authorities learn about the structure, as they likely will, they're going to consider a lot of that personal income. And even though the structure makes you safe, the taxation from the point of view of the Netherlands does not. So that's another reason it's very, very important to set up the tax residency as part of the overall structure.
What's the danger of running a personal e-commerce store under your name on Shopify or Amazon?
There are many problems. First off is just liability. So if you're selling something personally, e-commerce sellers tend to be involved in a lot of lawsuits. And when that happens, you have no protection if there's no structure. It means they can come after you personally. They can come after anything that's in your name, perhaps other businesses associated with you, property, really anything. Especially it's an e-commerce seller who hasn't set up a business or anything isn't going to have a foundation or a trust or something like that. That would be pretty unheard of. Now, if you have those structures and you're selling personally, it's still not advised, but you got a little bit of protection. But if you're just doing it in your name, you're leaving yourself wide open. And then as we also spoke about on the tax side, the expenses you can deduct and really how the government sees it, it's just much, much more complicated and expensive if you're operating under your name.
And also what you always mention on your X account, wealthy people don't own anything.
Exactly. If I look at like the wealthiest clients I have, on paper, these guys are broke. They, in fact, most of them owe money that they've in fact borrowed from themselves. So I think it's sort of a old school thinking that it's about who owns the most stuff wins.
But into the new money.
Yeah, for the new money, it's I think more and more, especially these younger guys, they're realizing that that was basically a line that the banks, the government sold us, that you need to acquire and own more and more and more. You can still own all of this stuff. You can still control all this stuff, but you, on paper, are not going to be the owner of this stuff. It's going to be owned by a foundation. It's going to be owned by business structures. It's going to be owned by a trust.
Speaking about that, we are going to be speaking about the new money that you're also bringing about old money concepts, which a lot of people know, but also the new money strategies is what we speak online is money generated from the internet, cryptocurrency, investments, retails online, all of this money. So a lot of these people, they just get lucky because they just listen someone online or they just got lucky with something after the pandemic. How actually they can run banking and also the payment processors in order to avoid these stressful issues that you actually are currently having with your clients, like freezing the accounts or they are not able to use their money. So how they can actually use the right proper structure of banking in this segmentation,
More and more, I think e-commerce sellers, even the ones who don't necessarily sell into the U.S., are using LLCs because once you get access to the U.S. market, you get access to U.S. banking, you get access to U.S. payment processors, you get access to the Shopify, the TikTok store, all of that, all of those tools, which makes it easier to sell and be profitable as an e-commerce seller. The problem, if you look at EU structures, even Hong Kong structures, yes, you're going to have payment processing available, but it's going to be much more expensive. Back to the conversation I had this morning, the seller runs everything through a Hong Kong company, no U.S. LLC. And that's fine, but the problem is he's paying 2 to 3% per transaction more to the Hong Kong processor than he would running it through the U.S. LLC. Mm-hmm. So just changing that one thing with a $500 inexpensive U.S. LLC, the guy is going to be able to increase his bottom line by thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars per month based on the volume he's doing, just by saving that 2 to 3%
annually.
2 to 3% per transaction.
Oh, per transaction.
So yeah. So with the volume he's doing, it's going to amount to in the low tens of thousands per month to his bottom line.
So especially when they sell internationally, you always recommend Stripe?
Well, it depends. Stripe is actually not good for e-commerce sellers. At least not as the only tool they use. Stripe works much better for things like I do, anything with coaching, consulting, that sort of thing. E-commerce, it's usually about thin margins and volume. And Stripe doesn't work so well for that. So generally, sellers are going to want to use some sort of platform that is geared specifically to e-commerce. And there are any number, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of payment processors in the U.S. and abroad. But especially any e-commerce seller who's doing any sort of volume should not be using Stripe as their prime, Stripe or PayPal or something like that as their primary gateway. They should be using something specifically built for e-commerce sellers.
Okay, so they have to have someone to build that for them when they are growing their numbers.
Yeah, so what they generally do as the numbers grow, let's say they started out using PayPal or Stripe or something like that, right. They will make sure they have the structure because it's much more difficult to get a payment processor than it is to get a Stripe account. So that is where, let's say you want a U.S. payment processor, you're going to need to make sure that everything is set up properly with the LLC. You have an EIN. You have business banking set up. usually with one of the traditional banks, with a Chase, Bank of America. You're not using a fintech. You've got a physical address in the United States. It becomes very important that your setup is pretty much perfect to be able to have access to the payment processors.
So how about can someone getting banned in 2025 from these entities? It is possible?
That happens all the time. Even with the proper setup, unfortunately, if you're dealing in high numbers of transactions, you're going to get fraudulent transactions. It's just, you're going to get somebody purchasing a product with a stolen credit card or something like that, and that can come back on you. Then you start getting chargebacks, and before you know it, they've frozen your account. I always recommend, especially for large volume sellers, multiple payment processors. So, and funds kept in multiple locations. So if something does happen, your funds get frozen, your payment processor gets frozen, you can just switch over to another one. It's not gonna end your business. It's not gonna shut you down, and you don't have to wait. There's no downtime. Why you say, wow, I have to set up, because it can take weeks to a month, say, to set up a new payment processor.
Right.
So the e-commerce seller who has that backup ready to go is on top of it. He's not going to be subject to this downtime.
You just mentioned multi-processors. What about multi-banking, multi-credit cards?
Well, yeah. I mean, same thing. It's diversification. It's that money should not be kept in one bank account. Okay. And probably not in one country either, especially as you get into real volume. You need multi-bank accounts in different currencies in different countries. And again, it's just a diversification tool. If something happens, if something gets shut down, if you get a lawsuit, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to go after every single account you have at the same time. And that's why I always encourage everybody to stay very diversified.
Now we're going to be speaking about legal issues and compliance, which is something very interesting to speak. This is another segment that we're going to be mentioning about the trademarks. Yours, do you have any story in particular about that?
So this happens a lot with e-commerce sellers. It actually happened to me years ago when I was doing my eBay stuff. You basically have these sharks, especially in the U.S.
Right.
And what they are, they're lawyers that go around suing over trademarks. So these offices just register trademark after trademark after trademark. And then you come along as an e-commerce seller and you have a business, a brand that you're selling under, and it's similar to one of these that have been trademarks. Boom, you get a lawsuit, you get a cease and desist, and suddenly your accounts are frozen, your payment processor's frozen, everything's frozen, your bank account, and you have this lawsuit. And generally speaking, these people aren't expecting you to actually go to court and have a trial and all of this, because in almost every case
They win.
Well, they're inconveniencing you enough, so you just throw money at them and it goes away. So, back in the day when I was doing it, it was less money. I talked to an e-commerce seller a couple of weeks ago. He had this exact situation happen to him, and I think he said it was $9,500,000. That's what they wanted from him.
No way.
Back in my day, it was $10,000, $20,000,
No
and so
way.
you'd have to settle for $5,000. Yeah, so he's in the process of it. I think he said he offered $15,000, but likely that won't be enough. They're going to want $25,000, $30,000, or even up to like half of it, $45,000, $50,000.
It's like the saying that you mentioned once about this Red Bull story, that in Spanish we say Red Bull give you wings, and because it doesn't give you wings, actually they received this lawsuit for $12 million, in the US, and they won't, because always there's people looking for those small mistakes.
Exactly. And it's not even a mistake. It's just lawyers capitalizing on something similar that they branded or trademarked. And they don't even use it. The ridiculous thing is they don't even use it as a business. Like, if you take the Nike swoosh or something like that and you duplicate that, it's like, well, obviously you're copying it. But you're talking, in most cases, it's a trademark based on a business that does not operate and has never operated. They're just guessing what people are going to sell as and then sort of capitalizing when something comes close to the trademark that they've registered.
And what are the compliance traps that Amazon sellers, Shopify sellers, they found in this situation?
What do you mean by the compliance steps?
Like what problems apart from that?
Well, that somebody who's selling on Amazon or Spotify is going to have?
Fine, yeah.
Well, I think the big problems with Amazon and with Shopify and with those platforms is again, just getting frozen. Happened to me again with products. Amazon especially, they like to change the categories of products that you're allowed to sell or not, or they require special permission.
Yeah.
So you take something like health supplement or something like that.
Right.
And one day it's fine to sell it, and then you have all this inventory, and then all of a sudden Amazon sends you notification your listings have been suspended because you no longer have permission to sell into this category.
Yeah, I read about supplements, a bunch of issues the last year. I think also your clients came off from the supplements.
Yeah, we've had some supplement clients who had issues with Amazon. It's a variety of things. I know, like sex toys is one of them.
Vapes.
Yeah. It's anything. It's just certain things, and then certain types of clothing and whatnot, especially like with the brands. All of a sudden they'll say not everybody can sell Nike, like only certain sellers can resell that. And the problem is, as most of you know, in the e-com space, a lot of it is just managing your inventory. So imagine, you've just invested in $1 million of inventory related to, let's say, a health supplement. And then, you've sold 100,000 of it, and you get your Amazon account frozen because you can't sell supplements anymore. What do you do with that other 900,000?
So the niche right now that you're seeing having problems are the supplements, most likely.
That's one of the big. That's one of the big ones. Anything you named one good one. I mean, anything with vape, anything with smoking products.
Cigars.
Cigars.
Yeah.
Although I don't think you can sell cigars on Amazon. Anything related to sex, things like sex toys, tend to be quite restricted as far as who can sell them and who can't.
We hope YouTube don't ban the word that you just said. So
Well.
we had just to make sure that we caught that.
No, I don't think they care.
They do.
Really?
Yeah, that's also, of course, all those laws. Now, let's just speak about this. So when e-commerce person is doing this, they have to be thinking in the trademark, very important to make sure that they are separating themselves from that. The contracts, the IP, maybe. What else?
Those are all important considerations. But again, it's not the easiest thing to take the case of the trademark. How do you protect yourself from a trademark that you don't know exists? That's the problem. So that then gets back into the discussion of strategy, because if your LLC is inside a foundation, it's inside a trust, you get sued, they can go after the LLC, but if you're not actually holding assets in the LLC, all they can really do is force that LLC to dissolve, and then you start again doing something else. They're not going to be able to go after you personally in the same way, or your other assets.
So if you're saying that trademark, let's say they receive a lawsuit, and that business entity that received that lawsuit is inside of a foundation, but inside of the foundation is owned by another company, and so on and so on, it has to be dissolved. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the only thing, like if the company itself is, say, a U.S. LLC,
right,
and that company is inside of a foundation, okay, they're not going to be able to go after the foundation itself. They're just going to be able to go after the LLC.
Right.
And generally, if the structure is set up correctly, that LLC itself is not going to have any money. Yeah, they can go after it. They could even win a lawsuit, but it's not going to be worth their while. They're not going to be able to recover enough to make it viable for them to have the lawsuit. It's certainly not going to be viable for them to try to sue the foundation or the trust or something like that because of the cost and the fact it's virtually impenetrable to be able to go after that.
Let's go with mindset and structure. What would you say to an e-commerce guy who is now doing in profit $5,000 to $10,000 a month? It is too early to start thinking about this?
Well, I think at $5,000-$10,000, you need a basic structure. So I think, even though that's not very much money yet, you need to be thinking you should have a basic business structure, even if it's just a US LLC, a UK limited company, something. So you're selling from that company. You're registering with the platforms using the company. You're banking with the company, not using your personal tax ID and your person to get those accounts.
So that will be the first step for someone who is already doing $5,000 to $10,000.
Yes.
Worldwide.
Or what?
Worldwide, I mean.
Worldwide, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. And the second question, what would be the best tax structure for someone that is leveling up?
So once somebody gets beyond that level,
What's the number?
I'd say once somebody gets, certainly by the time they get to like $10,000 a month, so, and we're talking profit, not revenue.
Okay.
So we're saying somebody who's, making six figures per year, so they're doing okay. They're not at the next level yet, but they're making okay money. That person should do what they can to optimize on the tax side.
Okay.
So that's going to mean, in an ideal world, setting up some sort of tax residency. For those who can't have a tax residency because they're stuck wherever they are, they can't leave the Netherlands. Somebody like that, in lieu of the tax residency, they should probably look at perhaps putting the LLC inside a Hong Kong company, something like that, where a multi-layered business structure that allows you to take some of the money personally that you'll have to pay tax on, but leave the rest of the money in an optimized business structure and at least defer the tax on that money.
I have a quick question for you because this is about mindset. Why in this sort of entrepreneur you don't advise to do this for investment, more in cash? Why they're looking more to have this in cash instead of, invest in other projects or having that into crypto? I don't know. Why you see the best for this sort of business? The best is to have some cash.
Well, it's not that I don't. It depends what the client's needs are. So with a lot of clients, I do recommend not leaving money in cash, to put it in crypto, to put it in Bitcoin, stocks, anything like that. E-commerce is very unique, though.
Exactly.
And what you got to realize is e-commerce, it's all about cash flow and being able to use that cash flow to purchase inventory.
Got it.
So
they must have.
They need
that.
quick access to cash. So the problem, and I've had clients like this who like to keep all of the excess money in a volatile cryptocurrency. So you put all of your money in Sol or something like that, and then the market turns as it does, and suddenly you're down 20-25% in a couple of weeks, which is very probable at some point, and you need access to that money to buy inventory. Well, you're sort of stuck at that point because you're either going to take a huge loss on your position or your business is basically non-functional because you can't buy inventory.
Right.
So that's why it's so important.
No, it's good to know because there are a lot of entrepreneurs seeing you in different spaces. And you mentioned a lot about banking. And a lot of people try to avoid banking, which is also the sort of client you have. I don't want to do anything with banking.
Yeah.
And you also have those solutions. But in this sort of unique, special investor or entrepreneur, you could tell that they must have the solution.
Yeah, because in e-commerce, you need, probably more than any other business, you need access to huge sums of cash to pay for your inventory, to pay for advertising. We have a lot of clients who just their advertising, they're running $1 million plus a month in Facebook and Instagram ads.
Right.
$1 million plus a month. Well, okay, I can get them the Amex so they can get miles and points, but they got to pay that Amex bill. So how do you do that? Well, you got to have cash flow, and you've got to have cash that you can access very quickly to pay those bills.
You also set up the Amex cards for them.
We do. So usually the gold standard is this Amex Gold business card, which gives you 4 times points on advertising spend.
Got it.
So for e-commerce guys, that's sort of the holy grail. The sort of downside about Amex has always been there's $150,000 per year cap. There are ways that we have that we can sort of remove that cap so you can keep getting Amex cards for the sellers, because we work with sellers who do $150,000 every day. Mm-hmm. So literally they need a new card every day so they can keep earning the 4 times points. Another thing that's just happened in the last week or so, Chase has come out with a new card called the Sapphire Reserve. Yeah. We were in Miami and they were telling us about this business card. And the unique selling feature on this card is there's no cap. So, subject to your credit limits and whatnot, but you can sort of get around credit limits by just constantly paying off the card. There's no cap. It's 3 times points, not 4 times, but that's still really good. And in theory, there's no cap. So I'm sure there are going to be e-commerce sellers doing $1 million a day in advertising and earning 3 million points per day.
So in other words, they are doing their business, what they like, but also they're able to travel for free, get some stuff also for free because they're using...
With $1 million, if you're earning, even if you take that on a monthly basis,
right,
there's virtually no way to spend 3 million points if you're earning that every month.
No, they keep just living in hotel.
You could live in the penthouse suites of the Ritz-Carlton and fly first class everywhere, and you won't get to 3 million points in a month.
But that's what the guys don't know out there.
A lot of them don't. And that's huge money they're leaving on the table because... I talk to especially like European sellers or from the Middle East, and they just have no idea because the credit cards in other parts of the world don't have miles and points to the same degree the U.S. cards do.
Okay, you sold me. I'm going to start with Cotufa. Let's start.
There we go.
Here we go. So now that we're listening to this, how we start with Cotufa? I want to start selling the e-commerce for cleaning the paws. Okay,
yes.
So I make $1 million just in that. Okay, so how I start doing? I got a trademark that it was not good. I got that lawsuit. I get out of that. But how we start? Tell me all that process.
So the basic place to start, I think, which is what we already did, is to set up the basic US LLC that will give you the ability to get into TikTok Shop, which you've done. To open up a bank account for Cotufa, which you've done.
You also opened that. Guys, if you need help on that, Jers just gave me a bunch of help with the TikTok shops.
Absolutely. We can open up all of that for you. I think, like in your case, you've already set up the tax residency. Right. So it doesn't matter that the LLC is passed through. Gabby's a Paraguay tax resident, so that money just flows through. We file her monthly return, which is 0, and she pays no tax on Cotufa's earnings. I think as those earnings get up there, the goal is, as I said, within 3 months, that Cotufa's earning $10,000 a month.
Not me.
Yeah, Cotufa, of course. But I think the next step, especially if we start doing ads and whatnot, which is likely going to happen, is getting Gabby and getting Cotufa into the ecosystems with Chase, with Amex, so they can start earning points and travel for free. For example, we were on the flight to Europe the other day, and Katufa had a nice little bed in first class.
Yeah.
She seemed very happy, right?
And the
Business class,
first class treatment as well. The best of that too.
Yeah, they brought her a little water bowl, and it was good. And that's the manner that Katufa's become accustomed to at this point. So she really needs to get into the miles and points so she can maintain that lifestyle.
And also, we need to make her work. The funny thing is that we went to this bank, and there was a Latina who helped us, and she said, "Guys, if you need help to open also the bank for your dog, just bring her here."
Yeah, we did this trip last week to Miami to open some bank accounts for this and something else, but we ended up with a really, really good contact at Chase who we can set anybody up with, who understands foreign business owners, doesn't ask a lot of questions, if you know what I mean, and makes it a pleasant experience to be able to access the Chase system, get the platinum counts that aren't going to get frozen, and eventually get the access to the U.S. credit.
Yeah, VIP clients only.
Exactly.
And that's only through yours, guys. Seriously.
Chase private banking. So it's a way we can get you in. And the other thing that's really cool is we're able to do this remotely.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to necessarily, although you might want to, there are benefits to doing it. If you can't or don't want to come to the U.S., it's possible to complete this process completely remotely.
Amazing. What are your final thoughts for this episode?
Well, I think e-commerce is a great business, and there's so much potential. But I think e-commerce sellers really need to do their best to optimize their setups. And in doing that, they're going to be able to increase the bottom line and either become profitable or become more profitable through tax optimization, through business structure, through miles and points. With a lot of products, as you know, the margins are so thin, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you take a product and your margin might only be 3%, right? But you're doing such a volume, you're making pretty good money. Well, by doing this miles and points stuff, you can get sometimes for each dollar you're spending 7-8 cents or even more in value.
Right.
So you're really increasing the bottom line and the profitability of what you're doing by using these strategies, by using these tools.
What's your message for these people who are doing right now 6 figures, 7 figures already?
If you're doing 6 or 7 figures, you need to reach out to me, to somebody else, and you need to protect
what you're building.
Yeah, exactly. I think these people need to set up the structure, probably some sort of foundation or trust, so that they really make themselves bulletproof, because so much can go wrong there. The more money you get, the more people, whether it's government, whether it's the tax man, whether it's a customer, whether it's a trademark shark, more and more of these people are going to come at you to try to take what's yours.
Not even that. I was reading the other day at a post. I was learning about we're living in a world, it is called bureaucracy, right? Which is something not even the public government takes from you, but also the private. So it's not even capitalism what we're living. It's something that even the private and the public are working together just to take to the middle person just what they don't have. So nowadays we have these tools that we can actually get the benefit of, upgrade our life. That's the best idea.
Absolutely. And also keep in mind, e-commerce sellers, for lawyers and for taxmen, it's very low-hanging fruit because there's so much money going through it. It's easy to find yourself the subject of a lawsuit or a tax inquiry, so to speak. So it's another reason why it's so important to create these structures and protect yourself.
Amazing, George. Well, thank you so much, George, for this informational podcast. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, for watching this meaningful podcast about e-commerce for entrepreneurs in 2025 and for the future as well.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. You can find us on the socials, thejersway.com. I'm happy I do consultations and happy to answer any questions that you might have about this or anything else we talk about.
Oh, and don't forget, guys, that we'll also providing a 15-minute call for free where you're going to be joining with one of our teams or also with me, depends on the day. But we're going to be assisting you in anything you require to get direct contact with yours.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Until next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.